week's Meet the Researcher series, we're having Joseph Carpini, who is doing his PhD at UWA Business School. Welcome, Joseph.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Joseph, I know you're doing a lot of interesting work in hospitals, particularly looking at how surgical teams work together. Can you tell us a bit more about your project?
Absolutely. Basically, I think the easiest way to explain the project that I'm doing is to ask a maybe not so easy question. Imagine you or somebody you loved had to go in for an elective surgery, so not an emergency where you actually have a choice about the surgeon you choose. So you have two options. The first option is a surgeon who's a technical master, but actually is not very interpersonally skilled at all. The second surgeon is of average skill, but quite good interpersonally, so really strong coordination and team abilities. Which one would you choose for yourself or somebody you loved?
I think I might take the first.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us would naturally take the first surgeon, that one with the high mastery, but not necessarily interpersonally skilled at all. But there is a growing body of literature that suggests that actually the non-technical skills, communication, coordination, are important aspects of surgery. So for example, we know that there's approximately a 22% adverse event rate in surgery. And in 13% of those cases, there's patient disability in the long term, about 18 months later. And in about 4% of those cases, we see patient mortality. So we're not talking about little errors here. We're talking about things that really have a huge impact for patients. The real issue that we find is actually the fact that we don't really understand that much about what causes these errors. So what's causing that 22%? So that's really where our research sits, and we're really trying to understand the interpersonal, the team, and the coordination aspect of surgery in order to make, surgery safer for patients, more efficient so that we can get more patients in and out of the operating theater, and ultimately, reduce the number of mortalities that occur in surgery.
Wow, this sounds like really interesting but also complicated work. So what did you do with the surgical teams exactly?
You're right, it is a really complicated issue, so we need to address it from a lot of different approaches. Basically, what ends up happening is at the beginning of a day, I choose a theater to observe, and I spend the entire day in that theater observing between 3 and 8 surgical procedures. Then what ends up happening is throughout the course of the day, I take structured notes on who's talking to who, what are they saying, is there a communication failure, and if there is a failure, what is the observable consequence of it? Then what I do at the very end of the day, when everybody's wrapping up, is I chase them down to ask them to do a really short questionnaire, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, that tries to assess the extent to which they think that there was good communication, teamwork, and how they think they performed technically. What I've ended up doing in the end is that I've collected about 206 surgical episodes, taking notes. I've collected over 210 surveys representing about 64 different surgical teams. And all of that in addition to the over 2,000 pages of handwritten notes that I've taken in theater, in addition to the hospital records that I've received. So to say the least, there's a lot of data involved.
Yeah, I know, Joseph, this project is still ongoing, but do you have some data or findings you can share with us?
Absolutely. We have some preliminary findings from our first study that we did. And basically, let's think back to that scenario that I presented at the very beginning with those two surgeons. So the first surgeon is the technical master, but interpersonally a monster. The second surgeon, not the best necessarily, average skilled, but is a really strong communicator. Well, our results thus far suggest that actually you'd be better off choosing the second surgeon, as that surgeon is less likely to encounter a near miss. A near miss is when something almost goes wrong but doesn't, either because somebody said something and interjects or just out of sheer luck. The real kicker, though, is the fact that we know that a near miss oftentimes turns into either a minor or a major complication. That's when something actually does go wrong. Furthermore, what we ended up finding was that the extent to which the team perceived strong non-technical skills like communication and teamwork, that was actually a better predictor of those minor and major complications than the team's technical abilities. Furthermore, we ended up finding that their ability to coordinate and collaborate with one another was the single best predictor in explaining surgical efficiency. So it turns out that actually the second surgeon would probably be the best in terms of patient outcomes for the hospital and probably in terms of preventing patient mortality. We're currently in the process of examining some additional variables and to confirm those results using another data set that we've collected.
Okay.
But you'll find updates on the Center for Safety's website at UWA.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Joseph.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.